things we do.
It's
Things we do
Friday.
for love. It is Friday, but more than Friday, it is June 3rd. June 3rd is a very powerful and most important day because it is the birthday of one Stephen Edward Brogan, my biological father.
Stephen Brogan
The
Appreciation
man
Day.
whose entire genetic composition comprises at least 48% of who I am.
7 alleles in common.
Sounds right. Sounds right.
Hello, Coach
So,
Woodard.
happy birthday. Hi, Coach Woodard. Happy birthday to my dad. And very happy that you're here. And also to his wife, they say my
biological mother. Ridiculous.
Diane Brogan.
She was there. Also, you look like her. So
I do look
you're
like her.
very happy mix of the two. Hi, Chloe. So I've had a
Who
run
do you
on
have today?
authors lately because I'm very into reading for fun and not just business. And so I had like a lot of horror authors, and this is a little bit of a different book. It's
a
called
different kind of
Breach
horror.
by Kelly Sokol. And it's about this girl who grew up with her dad running a gym. And she, as you might imagine, she meets some really interesting characters. There's a lot more to it than that, but one of the people she meets is a military guy, and sparks fly, and that's complicated. It's a complicated story.
And they build a family, but things get a little tricky when he goes out to his next deployment. So craziness ensues.
Like Kelly Sokol's new novel, Breach. So we're going to talk about her writing process. We're going to talk about balancing writing and motherhood and how she fleshes out her characters and all sorts of things.
Character flesh.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show. Yeah, we've been lousy with authors. Let's forget
You
it.
mean, just because it's purely selfish interest on my part.
Let's end the show.
Oh, and here.
Okay,
Stop it.
right.
But do you thank our sponsors for letting me talk to authors that I like?
Yeah, I know. Because that's... all right. Sponsors. Hey, if you want a podcast, you can get one pretty easy. Castos.com. Peas in a pod, baby. Easy to make a podcast. Good people. Matt Medeiros is the guy we know over there, but there's a good team. They're growing. Like, they keep hiring. So that must be because people are using them more and more. So get some.
Maybe.
Hey, want a .online domain? You can get one for a whole buckaroo. One whole year for $1. Use code Chris. Just put it in any way you want.
You have to do it in all caps or it doesn't work. I don't know why. Enter the code Chris in all caps to get the discount.
That one. Hey, you want to make a video show just like this? You can end the show whenever you want. Show's over.
Oh my God, stop it. I have questions for Kelly Sokol.
Oh, we have to talk to Kelly, right?
You can't do this to me.
All right, but you could if you wanted, because you could use StreamYard. See brogan.me/StreamYard. It is an incredible product. It works super fine, super easy. Any old monkey can run the show. Everyone thinks that Kerry,
you going Kelly again?
You know when I do it? It's when I go to call you like the non-important person that runs the show.
Please shut up.
Showrunner Kelly.
People used to think that they wanted me to co-host their shows with them, but what they really wanted was StreamYard. So see brogan.me/StreamYard, endorsed by Kelly. Yeah.
Kelly likes it. All right. So if you wanted to learn the co-host's real name, it's because we're talking to Kelly Sokol. If you want to go to the search engine and find out the real co-host name of the Backpack Show, you could type in the Backpack Show at research.com and you'd probably find us. It's a search engine. It was made by a couple of people who wanted to stick it to the man. And
you know what? It's powered by some really great technology. Go and check it out. It's a great search engine. And if you're logged in, you can earn crypto rewards.
Yeah, thanks for the logged in reminder.
It's not my fault you forgot to log in.
Look, for
about it.
many long times, I guess, is what the truth is also. Listen, it's summertime a lot of times in the West anyway, and a lot of times you got to go buy some more books. You got to put another one on your menu. This is Breach. This is Kelly Sokol's book. Just came out this couple of weeks ago. And so let's drag her on here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to put a book like this together. Kelly, welcome.
Thanks. I almost cried off my podcasting makeup when it canceled the show in the first 45 seconds.
I like the podcasting makeup.
It's as
I have
opposed to my
podcasting shirts.
So this is the second book, not the debut novel. Was the experience of writing a second book different?
It was. I think with Breach took about 5 years from, the night I met Marley in my notebook to May 17th this year when it was published. And um, it was such a different experience from the first because part of it was I I knew what it was like to have a book published. I knew that my kind of irrational expectations of a debut novel, I'd ridden that wave, fell right off it, and so this one was just about seeing how much better I could be, what kind of story I could come up with, and then once I met Marley, like just how honestly I could tell her reality. And so I would say the experiences were completely different, but this one was particularly gratifying, I think, because for a long time it really didn't look like it was going to find um, a connection with readers until that you start to give up hope, move to the next project, and all of a sudden, people get really excited about it. So I was really in it for the process and the work, and then now I'm so thrilled that it's connecting with readers.
You tackled a really complicated subject for your first book. The Unprotected is, from what I understood, a postpartum depression kind of a book. We've had the kid, everything's going to be fine. Oh, it's not fine. In fact, it's hell, and everything comes to unspooling. This topic is hard. This topic really separates you out. Like when you're at the playground with the other kids or whatever, you can't talk about it to anybody. It's a roughie, and so I wonder. We're going to talk about Breach, of course, the whole episode, but does the Unprotected bounce you into Breach? Because even that experience of kind of putting that out there, does that put you in a sort of different conversation stream that maybe you didn't want to be in, or maybe you had a fill of or whatnot? Tell me a little bit about the distance between Unprotected and Breach.
Yeah, I think that artists in general and writers I know specifically, like we dig into our obsessions, and the things that keep us up at night, and we write them and we write them and we obsess over them until they sort of move out of our system. Like these characters stop like niggling you every minute of the day to say like, get me right, get me out here. And so in The Unprotected, I didn't realize that I was, going into it, that I was going to be writing a psychological thriller about about postpartum depression and postpartum, I guess, psychosis. Although the Laura, the main character, very, I think, intentionally goes completely undiagnosed. Which it's interesting that in the 5-year interval between when The Unprotected was published and now, I'm so thrilled to really believe that it would be almost impossible for somebody struggling the way that Laura did, to not become diagnosed, to not find at least some support. And so that has been a radical change over the last 5 years. But I do think, while my obsessions probably are shifting, as everybody's do, I love to write a difficult woman. I love women who are challenging to like. They're not always likable. I tend to have characters that I like literally sometimes want to like throttle them, be like, no, 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 don't do that. Like go this way, not that way. But I know I'm onto something with them when they say, no, no, your plot may send me this way, but I'm becoming more human and I'm going in this other direction that is not only going to cause a lot of rewrites, but will also really frustrate the writer and the reader.
Your characters drive the book. So I need to understand kind of how they're so rich and nuanced, the characters in the book. How do they present themselves to you?
The Marley was such an interesting moment. So Marley is the protagonist of Breach. She appeared in a similar way to me as Laura, in The Unprotected. But I actually remember the night and the moment that I discovered Marley. I was writing with a group of friends. I've been teaching at a place called the Muse Writer Center in Norfolk. It's just an incredible literary center and community that has been instrumental, in my writing life. My first book had just come out, and I was really trying to get back into the creative work as opposed to kind of this very outward facing part of the work that I'm in now. And I was writing with some friends, and Janine Ladis, who is a New York Times bestselling memoirist and just the most capable of pulling creativity out of, like, I don't know, an egret, I mean, anything, or even an inanimate object, was leading us through this. We were all writing to the same prompt together. And the prompt she gave us was home. And the rules are really simple. You just have to write until the timer goes off. You can't stop. You don't edit. You don't judge. called Right Now. You just write. And then when we're done, you can share your work and that or not, and, or just do what you want. And I was like home and I was having trouble and I was going through all of my like, what do I write when I don't know what to write? And somebody had a plastic water bottle and it was super hot. It was July. And so it crackled like it was expanding or condensing or something. And the sound of that crackle is what brought me into the character. And I often start with like very prosy lists because I really believe in writing from the five senses as opposed to like almost writing up from the details as opposed to writing down from like the big lofty idea. And I pictured a woman. I could see her hand holding this water bottle, and it was like very slim and but like young, but like had been through a lot. You can learn a lot from somebody's hands, I think, and like what they've been through already. And she's holding the water bottle in one hand. The water's warm, and she's just trying to get the last little bit out. And then it like goes from there that I realized she's been brushing her teeth with that little bit of water and she's spitting it out onto the ground. And I could picture her other arm was stabilizing herself on the trunk of a car. And then from that extension of the hand, and again, it's just our brains start to unfold these details if you are aware, if you're kind of present to them and you let them come up. And it was a red Subaru, and on the Subaru was a sticker, a heart-shaped sticker, and it said, "I heart my sailor." Which is something you see a lot around the Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Virginia area. And so I realized, okay, she either loved or had loved a sailor, or maybe this was a used car. I had to figure all these things out. And then I saw from the sticker, it was on the rear windshield. Through the rear windshield, I could see small children in the car, and they were dozing. And it was a 15-minute writing exercise. And that was where Marley kind of appeared, and I got just this early sense of this crisis she was in, this desperation. And a very similar thing happened with Laura in The Unprotected, that I started thinking about this woman again in another moment of crisis. I see a woman with a baby carriage, and it's a very expensive stroller. You could tell this woman, it was like probably been Pinterested or vision boarded or something. And she hasn't. All she wants to do is walk away. And she's looking around. And when I first thought about Laura, she was in a Starbucks for some reason, but that changed in the novel. But it was like she just wanted to walk away and had this moment, a very intense moment of, my child will be better off without me. This child that she went through years of fertility treatments to have, really shredded the innards of her marriage to accomplish, and she got everything that she wanted. And that's when her life started to fall apart. And I love that these two characters are so different from one another. Laura was highly educated. She was a very successful ad exec. She was old, she was in her late 20s, early 30s. I mean, Marley has already lived an entire lifetime by the time she's in her early 20s and meets Jace, the explosive ordnance disposal tech that really changes everything in her world. But they're similar in that these women kind of, they think things that we're not supposed to think, and that they even say things that we're not supposed to say, and they show us these uglier sides of ourselves. And for me, that's where all the good stuff is.
They're being targeted for very different Facebook ads, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Kelly, Jace is an interesting character choice. EOD Tech is kind of an interesting character choice because it's one of those things that if someone didn't see Hurt Locker, they're not especially into that world or whatever. They don't understand what that's going to mean. Why an EOD Tech? What did it have to be? Because obviously the character had to be someone who's going to come up involved with some trauma, because the whole story is how Marley's going to help try to keep this folded up. Why EOD? And did you try a few other things first? Was he a ballet teacher first? Like, what else did you get?
I knew he was going to be military just because, and then he was going to be a sailor, so he'd most likely be Navy from the sticker on the car. And for some reason, you work through different drafts and so many things get excised, but there are certain things that it's like, no, you cannot ignore me. And that was one of those details that I knew I couldn't ignore. And I live in a town that we have the largest naval base, I think, in the world. We have members of every one of the military forces is very much a presence here. We have a huge special forces community in the area. And while my family is, we're definitely civilian, it's hard to just not be influenced by that culture here. And then as I started to research where Jace kind of in my head would come from, what his skill sets really would be, because he hails from this very small town in Nebraska, in far western Nebraska, and he's picturing this life, on the ocean, perhaps on a carrier, but then his skill set is really in these advanced systems and in electronics and all of these things, and so he actually sort of catapults himself in a way out of the service that he maybe expected and really wanted, and then into this incredibly difficult line of special operators that are called into crises in every environment, all over the world, and they can be deployed with different special force teams and in all the different branches of the military, and they're folks that I think sometimes forget what we're asking them to do and be a part of, and the pressure that we're putting on these folks who are really very young, and who could be prepared for holding the lives of several members of your team, plus the larger team as a whole, plus every civilian person you're protecting, in your hand and in the control of you and a robot. I mean, it's just such an impossible weight, and so that made sense for me. And they have a different schedule; they don't deploy in the same way. And for some reason, it made sense to me that Jace would be, EOD versus maybe a SEAL or a Green Beret or a Riverine. That to me just seemed like it would be his calling, and then also in some ways, maybe part of his undoing, because he's drawn, I don't know, trauma can call us to further trauma, I think. And he had a really difficult childhood, and he really thought that by just dramatically changing the trajectory of his life, he was going to be able to really just catapult past it. And sometimes that's a lot easier than it sounds, or it's a lot harder. Much harder than
why Nebraska?
So Jace was one of the hardest characters for me to crack. And I love to write characters, even though I knew it was going to be Marley's story and the perspective would be limited to hers. I like to write my main characters in first person to really get a sense of them. And Jace took me a couple of years. And I was lucky enough to be awarded a national parks arts residency. And I was sent to this incredible little corner of western Nebraska near Scotts Bluff, called Agate National Monument Fossil Beds. And I was born in Omaha, and if people from Nebraska, there's like western Nebraska, and then there's Omaha, and the two do not meet. And it's like it's so funny. My aunts and uncles who live in Valentine, western Nebraska, say going to Omaha is like going east. And so I'd not been to that part of Nebraska, even though I worked for a Nebraska congressman. I'd seen a lot of the state. And the 3 weeks that I spent in that space, it was the first time I could connect with Jace, because the landscape actually is remarkably similar to parts of Afghanistan. It's these very windblown, harsh steppes of land. And there was something about these ancient discoveries of the fossils there, the crossing over of the Lakota Sioux people, the Ogallala Sioux people, and then the westward expanding Americans, that it all came together, that he would be from this completely landlocked town, literally in the middle of the, dead center of the United States, and then enlist in the Navy. And there are so many more folks from Middle America, I think, who do that than I would have ever imagined. Folks who have to train to pass the swim test because they've never been in an ocean. They've never been in a giant body of water because there's not one any nearby. And he just wanted to get as far away from home as he possibly could. So he made it, all the way to the East Coast of the United States, and then was deployed all over the world.
Marley, on the other hand, stuck pretty close to home, the gym where she was basically raised, seeing a lot of the characters that come through there, and it feels really gritty and real. Did you have experience like working out in places like that, or like do you look for the Old Town Gym, or are you like a Planet Fitness person? I need to know where this came from.
Yeah, so I actually I'm about to turn 44 in my early 30s, I guess mid 30s after I finished having kids. A girlfriend of mine and I don't know how we got there, but we ended up in this incredible boxing gym in a warehouse building, not in the Ocean View section of Norfolk, which is a real place, but in this more industrial heart of the city. And I have never in my, very like basic suburban white girl way. Like I've never had a workout like this in my entire life. Like I thought I was going to pass out when I walked in because they don't smell good. And I think people have told me that, the book, they can, sometimes they wish they didn't smell it as clearly as they did, but it's something that it doesn't exist any other place. And I knew that the couple years that I trained there, I knew I wanted to use it somewhere. I wasn't sure where it would be. It was just so vivid and transformative, and watching people of all ages, gender, races, I mean, work together, and just we were all in this shared suffering that we were all putting ourselves in there voluntarily. Only a handful were going to be fighters that had any chance of going somewhere. That I thought it was remarkable, and I watched these families sort of form in this gym. And I don't know, it was that combination of like almost passing out from heat stroke, sweating out 4 pounds of, just salt water. And like, I think it's something that I love about ultra running that I do now. It strips you down. And so you can become very porous and aware of what's going on around you. And I saw these incredible relationships for folks, if you got to know them, it sounded like they didn't have that kind of support outside of the gym. And so I just thought it was really an incredible time. And so I'd essayed about it. I journaled about it for years. And then finally, when I thought of Marley and I figured out where I thought she was from, and she's such a fighter, that would be a natural place for her to be spending her, after school hours and early Saturday mornings as a kid.
No cartoons for Marley.
Not unless somebody could bring in a little TV in there, and it would still be interrupted with a whole bunch of, FUs and get you to move faster and move your feet and speed bag and all those sounds too.
You're in the way.
Yeah.
The whole concept of this is how does Marley put everything back together again when things get even crazier? As the book keeps going on, there's crumbling. And so the part we can't talk about because it gets the whole plot is all that, but how long did it take you to land that? How long, how did you keep all of that spaghetti up in the air before you finally got it to where you're like, okay, I could accept this?
I think I finally felt like I struck the real crisis, because poor Marley's life is like a large series of crises that tend to continue to ramp up. And then the ending, probably it was like draft 14 or 15. So it was a lot. And I initially thought that Marley's story started when things really start to get bad in her family life. But I realized it wasn't. It was she and Jace deserved to have their meeting. They're both so deserving of good things in this life that I wanted them to at least have that, and at least have the reader have some sense of that. And then as I got to know Marley, her resilience and her humanity just kept shining through. And she certainly makes some choices, says some things, does some things that, on paper don't look great. And then I would not have, I certainly wouldn't advise a friend or a peer to do. But to me, that's what makes her human. We can be all the things. We can be scrappy and honest and all those things. And we can also, take sometimes when we need to, and we need to survive. And then when you put children in the mix, I think a parent really, really is stripped down to their essence, because what won't you do? What wouldn't you give to keep them at the very least afloat, even if you're drowning?
So she gives herself very good advice. She just, like Alice in Wonderland, she very seldom follows it. You could hear her. You're like, yes, that's a very sensible thing. And then she won't do it. She'll do something else. So like you say, it's frustrating, but it also makes her, like, you could sort of feel Marley breathing while you read the book. And I was super into it. So that said, like, do you envision follow-up books, or do you feel like you've told their story, or is there anything you're thinking about, like, that needs to continue or expand? Or are you on to the next one?
Well, I'm working on another project now, but normally after I spend a few years with characters, they kind of I think about them. I sort of say my goodbyes, and I move on into this next headspace. Marley it has not gotten out of my head yet. Her boys are not out of my head. Her family, and so I wonder if there isn't maybe some more to tell. I feel like this part of her story ended where it needed to now, and there needs to be some kind of a real pause and a real, like, 'cause I think she's still sort of questioning where things are going to go and figuring things out and trying to find her path. And I wonder if there isn't more for me to explore there. I wouldn't have thought that going in, and I wouldn't have thought that even, probably draft 11 or 12. I really thought this was kind of contained where the pages are now, but I don't know. I wonder because she's still sort of, I think about her so much still. Whereas for Laura, her story was where it needed to be in my mind.
The book could have been called Marley. It really could have. So how did we end up with Breach?
For the longest time, it was Marley's story because I do that with every work in progress. I am the absolute worst at titles. I hate them. I'd rather write a book. I can help with other people's titles. I love to help my students title things. For mine, I'm the worst. But it was funny. I have to give credit to my husband. He's an attorney. He was also in the Navy in many, many lifetimes ago and before we met, that we were talking about the book, and he'd read an early draft, and I was really struggling with a title, and we were batting some other ideas around. I had some boxing references and some other things, but it's 100% Marley's story from, and it always was. But I loved the word breach because it's so freighted with meaning. Like it's obviously a homophone for a breech birth, and that's scary and dangerous and unexpected. In the Special Forces community and the Navy SEALs, there's a breacher. Is one a really important role. You can breach a perimeter, you can breach a promise, and so many of these things have real resonance in the story that it felt like it fit. And I was waiting for then the publisher to take it and be like, this is trash. We're going to rename it, whatever we want to, which is often what happens.
Not to Chris.
No, they fought me on a couple of book titles. Breach also is, the hull can breach, and you have to take on water. I mean, there's just 16 or more really good reasons why it should be called Breach. So I took it as a breacher, I was like, why is he in EOD tech then? But that was just me being an idiot. But yeah, there's so many ways it could go. So there may or may not be a sequel. We never know because Kelly Sokol does not write the way other people write. She's her own person. She might find something different in a run or in a boxing match that gets her to another place. There's a lot here. But we'll be here to watch for it because the next time you're around, just reach out. We'd love to have you back on the show to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you guys so much.
We have come to that part of the show where we do this kind of thing.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Yep, so we just did that.
Come on, how can we pick anybody else?
How to pick anybody else besides...
It's his birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you don't know. Come on, that's pandering.
I never get to pick unless he's not here, but I would... Yay!
My dad, Steve Brogan. Steve Brogan. You are now entitled to one free apple. Go buy it.
It's his birthday. You can't
so
even give him an apple on his birthday.
Maybe I could PayPal him an apple. I mean, who does that sort of thing? So
not one of the
do
good
that.
ones, though.
No, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do that, don't get like a pink lady.
Yeah.
Just a
no gala.
Granny Smith for you.
No ambrosia.
No ambrosia. Ask everybody this question: what goes in your backpack? I mean, we've asked everybody. We've asked Sir Mix-a-Lot. We've asked Sister Anne Flanagan. We've asked Mistress. What's her name?
And
Harley.
Mistress Montana. Both them.
Montana. Two different dominatrixes.
Awesome.
What goes in your backpack? This could be
There's
something
different
physical.
kinds, Kelly. There's different kinds.
So, Kerry, what's something physical you can add to a backpack?
Extra set of teeth. DJ Cumberbund said that he's an amazing artist who mashes up music in new and imaginative ways.
Janet says she likes your title, by the way.
Thanks, Janet.
He's also a wrestling fan, so we're like, maybe that's why, but he did not explain it. So.
I like it. Never explain, never complain.
Correct.
What metaphorical thing, Kerry, could we add to the backpack?
Kindness. Ariel Helvetica, burlesque performer, put kindness in the backpack.
I love that.
Yeah.
Right as you laughed in her face. Okay.
Hey, not because of her answer. I was
Kelly
primed to
Sokol,
laugh.
what would you add to the backpack?
Ooh, I've been giving this a lot of thought. So my physical item would be a strawberry Uncrustable. Yeah, they're amazing. You have to stay hungry in this life, but also you have to feed yourself. And when you're out on the trail or lost in your head in a story somewhere, you can let that little bad boy defrost in your pocket and enjoy it anywhere you want. And then my metaphorical thing is like memories of the pain cave. Like what is that stuff where you can tap into the things that make you the most honest, and that's usually the stuff that is the most terrifying to talk about, to write about, but it makes for, I think, the best writing and my favorite things to read and write.
The most painful. Go get you this book, everybody.
It's also the name of my goth band. The Pain Cave. I don't know how you came across that, but yeah.
I'm totally quoting an ultra runner who is just insane, and she talks about the pain cave all the time. So I'm
running away from the pain cave.
That's what most people do. That's right. Most people do.
Looking for a slip and slide away from the pain cave.
Well, I can tell you, the birthday boy, I've got a sense of what he's going to do today because my dad's very particular about his birthdays, especially since he moved to Las Vegas. So first, there's going to be a mad rush to a far away on the other side of town ATM, and then he's going to go to
They can't take